This video is brought to you by channel partner 3 years running, SteelSeries. SteelSeries support what we do here while also providing you guys with a handsome discount on the best peripherals money can buy. Get 12% off any purchase using offer code SKILLUP at checkout over at steelseries.com or stick around to the end of the video to learn more.
Tales of Kenzera Zhao is the debut title from Surgent Studio, a team formed by Abubakar Salim, who you may recognize as the voice of Bayek from Assassin's Creed Origins. He presented at the Game Awards last year with a touching speech about the passing of his father. He spoke on their relationship, how his father ignited his passion for video games, and how he's still working through the pain of this loss. He said that he realized that the best way he could process that grief was to create a video game in his honor. Thus, Tales of Kenzera Zhao was born. A clear reflection of his journey, Tales of Kenzera Zhao is a deeply personal story about working through grief. It opens to a futuristic cityscape where a boy by the name of Zuberi is handed a book written by his father who recently passed away. It's within this book that you're introduced to the fictional character of Zhao, a shaman who's dealing with the same loss, voiced by Abubakar, and Kolunga, the god of death, voiced by Tristan D. Lala, who, funnily enough, plays Adewale in Assassin's Creed Black Flag. Zhao intends to use the powers vested in his father's sun and moon masks to bargain with Kolunga, who agrees to bring his father back to the realm of the living in return for bringing peace to the three great spirits that have escaped death's grasp. So, a few months back, I reviewed Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown. That was a fantastic metroidvania on all accounts, the exception of which being the story. While it certainly excelled on the presentation front, the lack of character work meant I couldn't get invested in the events unfolding, and I lamented that this was especially disappointing given how ripe the metroidvania genre is for a character-driven narrative. Well, I'm delighted to say that Tales of Kenzera does deliver on that front. Immediately what jumped out at me was the voice work, which is just superb, especially between Zhao and Kolunga, as you might expect with this kind of talent behind them. But it's the writing alongside these performances that really defines these characters and makes this journey so compelling. Unlike Sargon, Zhao is never alone. Kolunga being ever present throughout the story means that Zhao has someone to constantly bounce off of, allowing you to properly get a grasp of his character and observe his development over the course of the story.
What is funny?
Sorry, Amber Stone? Is that really the name?
These are the stories of your ancestors.
What I appreciated most about Zhao, though, is that despite his powers, his confidence, and his sense of humor, this is a deeply vulnerable character. You'll watch impatience get the better of him, his fear consume him, and his good intentions fail him. You often get the sense that behind his literal masks, he's struggling to keep it together, but being able to open up to Kolunga throughout his journey allows him to process and harness those raw emotions. Along the way, the duo also run into a few colourful characters bearing some relation to the Great Spirits, each in need of aid. Their stories are brief, but similarly tragic, and with Kolunga's guidance, each of these tribulations becomes a valuable lesson in dealing with loss, building on each other, and giving Zhao the strength to endure. With this heartfelt story, these believable characters, and the voice talent to bring them to life, Surgent Studio have made it remarkably easy to embrace the teachings that ripple throughout Tales of Kenzera, that of letting go and learning to push on when the world is beating you down. With a short but sweet 10-hour campaign, it does move fast, and the messaging can seem heavy-handed at times as a result, but I think there's just enough space between each triumph and downfall to allow each beat to breathe. It certainly helps that those moments of reflection are also accompanied by vibrant environments and a wonderful soundtrack. The world of Kenzera is less tightly interconnected than most other Metroidvanias, but no less expansive. Between thick forest layers to stormy mountain peaks to sweeping dunes and volcanic caverns, there's a remarkably diverse array of biomes to navigate. While I think the general art style lacks distinctiveness, environments do look great, and the African influences make themselves known here with the rich colorization that really pops from the screen. Those cultural inspirations are profoundly present in the soundtrack though, which is very good. The African instrumentation that beats at a high tempo alongside orchestral melodies with the choral chants in the background. At every boss fight and chase sequence, I just crank the volume up so I could jam out to the rhythm. Speaking of rhythm, that's a very fitting word to describe Tales of Kenzera's gameplay, particularly when it comes to the combat, but we'll talk about the puzzles and platforming first. The core conceit is that you're able to hot swap between the powers of the sun and the moon. This is a metroidvania. Areas will be inaccessible to you, but in time you'll adopt new abilities that allow you to access them, such as one in the moon stance that allows you to throw a projectile that freezes running water, allowing you to turn them into walls that you can jump between, or the mask of the sun gaining a spear throw that allows you to activate switches. But it isn't just element specific, there's plenty of universal moves you'll unlock, like hurling yourself through barriers, a grapple, gliding, the typical Metroidvania fare. It sounds like a lot to manage, and it could have resulted in quite arduous sections, but thankfully it's never so demanding that you're forced to use all of this in combination. Often it's just a few at a time, and with most of it using those familiar universal abilities, it never becomes too complex. You'll use those abilities for exploration as well, though I found that was less of a focus here than what the genre usually offers. The map is quite linear, and the only rewards to be found in the occasional side nook are breakables for bonus XP, and some challenges that'll reward you with trinkets that you can mix and match for passive effects. These aren't particularly out of the way, and because the fairly small number of trinkets don't offer wildly meaningful effects, I didn't feel too incentivized to go and collect them all. For me though, this was a relief. Frankly, I enjoyed not getting lost, not being asked to backtrack regularly. The story really leads you by the hand. It keeps you moving forward, which I also found quite fitting and a little clever, given that's one of the core themes that Tales of Kenzera explores. All those traversal abilities are also useful on the combat front, but you'll use them in conjunction with each mask's distinct capabilities, which makes switching between them more crucial than ever. The sun side is melee focused, the moon is ranged, each with a couple basic moves that can be enhanced in a lightweight skill tree. Combat then becomes this elegant dance as you weave between stances in the heat of battle, using each one's strengths to dispatch ground-based targets, aerial targets, and deal with specific elemental shielding. It's a simple combat system, but nonetheless dazzling to behold and very rewarding to pull off when you get the hang of it. There's a good amount of flexibility here too, in that outside of bursting those shields, you're not always forced to use a specific stance to deal with a particular enemy. You might use the moon's ranged blast to dispatch flying foes, but I also found myself using it while closing the distance on melee enemies so that they would stay flinching. Similarly, that freeze ability that I mentioned, I was often using that to shut down enemies of all types, keeping them in stasis to deal with other enemies or to string together a melee combo uninterrupted. Because yes, they can very easily interrupt you, as enemies do not flinch when they're shielded. In that way, one of the main criticisms I'd level at the combat is that those shields can be quite a nuisance to deal with when there's too many of them on the field, especially given how quickly they restore. The combat feels at its best when you're given full freedom to chain together moves, using each stance for their intrinsic advantages rather than being forced to do so. You do eventually get a universal ability that easily breaks shields, but it comes quite late given how early you're introduced to this shield mechanic. Enemy variety is also rather lacking. The enemies you fight in the first biome will still be a regular enemy in the last one. Every so often you'll be introduced to some new enemy type that gets added to the total pool, but you'll still only come across about half a dozen in total. Because of the lack of enemy types, the back half of the game just throws so much at you, becoming rather unwieldy to manage at times. As far as boss encounters go, there's only a few and they're okay. Not particularly noteworthy when it comes to their presentation or mechanics, but I did largely enjoy them, especially the final boss, which does demand a lot of you, asking you to lean on everything you've learned throughout your journey. Overall, Tales of Kenzera is a decent Metroidvania experience. I had a good time with the combat. Zhao feels great to control, and there's just enough depth and freedom of expression to sustain the full 10-hour runtime. The puzzles and platforming perhaps underutilize the stance switching mechanic, but in that sense, they'll feel familiar to those experienced with the genre while still offering some light challenge. The story is great too. It's not remarkable, but it's a moving tale with excellent voice acting that will surely resonate with those who have lost a loved one. Every story begins at the end of another. It's not just the game's tagline, but a phrase that's reinforced throughout every facet of Tales of Kenzera and its development. It's the story of Zhao, whose entire odyssey begins as a result of his father's passing. It's the story of Abubakar Salim, healing from the very same loss and sharing what he's learnt with the world by starting his journey into game development. And it's the story of Surgent Studios, who have delivered here a solid debut that I hope heralds the start of many more games to come. Tales of Kenzera Zhao releases on April 23rd for all current gen platforms, and I recommend it.
SteelSeries, you know who they are, makers of the best gaming peripherals on the market and long time channel partner. It's a really important partnership to us because SteelSeries really do make the absolute best stuff. Go and look at reviews, the testimonials, the top 10 lists, whatever category it is, be it headsets or mice or keyboards or whatever, you're gonna see SteelSeries kit right there at the top. They consistently put out the most durable, most comfortable, best performing stuff on the market, and it's genuinely a really good feeling to be partnered with a brand that takes so much pride in their product. My entire setup is SteelSeries and it has been for a while now. The Aerox 5 Wireless is my mouse of choice, so comfortable, so light, so precise, I really do love it. My keyboard is the Apex Pro, a full-size mechanical keyboard featuring the fastest and most responsive switches on the market. The world's speed typing record was set on this very keyboard. My pride and joy though is the Arctis Nova Pro wireless headset. I've used dozens and dozens of different headsets over the years, but this is by far and away the best gaming headset I've ever used, hands down, no competition. From comfort to durability to sound quality to software, the whole thing is just flawless. I couldn't imagine ever moving to a different wireless headset because everything else just feels like a downgrade at this point. But SteelSeries also have a range of other stuff too. If you're looking for a set of speakers, their new Arena lineup provides you clear and powerful sound from a really small form factor. And if you're doing content creation, I really recommend checking out their Alias Pro microphones, which support dual PC setups as well as advanced functionality like AI noise cancellation. Best of all, whatever you buy on the SteelSeries.com website, you will get a full 12% discount when you use offer code SKILLUP at checkout. That's 12% off, no strings attached to any item on the website when you use offer code SKILLUP at SteelSeries.com. Thanks for another year of amazing support, SteelSeries. I really do appreciate it. Thanks to them for sponsoring this video, and thank you for watching it.